And we are live. Hello, 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 everybody. This is Conversations with Cheryl, and I am your host, Cheryl Lacey Donovan, and I am so excited to be with you on today. I have a very special guest with me for the broadcast today. She is Lileeta Thompson Harlem, and we have known each other for quite some time. When I was first getting into speaking and traveling and all of those kinds of things, she was one of the first people that invited me to some of her events that she was having. Was it in Virginia or?
Yes.
In Virginia. So I am truly thrilled to have her here with me today. We are being supported by Restore Her Movement. And just to give you a little bit of background on what that's all about, the HER stands for Healing, Enlightenment, and Renewal. And that is what we're trying to do with the 7 principles of Restore Her. So everybody that we invite on the broadcast is talking about some of those principles, whether it's restoring people's identities, their soul, their purpose, their passion, their relationships, whatever it is. We're trying to help people get to a place where they care for themselves so that they can better care for others. And I am thrilled to have Lileeta Harlem with me here today. How are you?
I am doing great. And let me just say how excited I am to be here. Like you said, we've known each other now for so many years, and I'm just super proud of you just to see all the things that you're doing in the community and for women. So it is definitely an honor and a treat to be here today. So thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. So before we get into everything, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So like you said, my name is Lileeta Harlem, and basically right now what I'm doing is empowering women through a brand called My Natural Me. But I also help people feel good by doing customized keepsake boxes that are boxes that basically on the outside are filled with motivational words and encouragement, and they can be filled with different products. But the real key is that the box itself is something that's empowering to people. And then I'm happy to say that I just published my first book, which is Celebrating a Legacy. Yes, I'm so excited. And the amazing thing about this book is that it's a story of survival. It's about the people in my life, my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt, and the things that those powerful women went through in their lives and how they overcame so many tragedies and trials and tribulations, and then the lessons that I got from it, but also what can be passed on to other women coming up. So I'm super excited about that. And then through that, I'm also doing workshops, and I'm starting a video series that's going to be talking about how we can pivot. So I'm staying pretty busy, but it's all really good. It's all good.
That is awesome. And you know what? As I'm listening to the kinds of things that you're doing right now, I can't help but to bring in some of the present day issues that we're facing and looking at with regards to surviving and thriving in turbulent times and difficult situations. So what do you think? What is your stance on what we're dealing with right now? Because it's just it's surreal to me. That's the best way I can put it.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And I think one of the things that I've been saying all along is that I try to be very careful because so many people are suffering and having to process and grieve and mourn in their own way for different reasons across the board. So I try to be very careful in what I say because I never want to disrespect anyone else's, experience and what they're personally going through with everything that's happening. But I'm reminded of something that I actually talk about in my book, where my grandmother, when I was interviewing her, and she talked about racism. And she talked about, she was a very feisty person. She still is. And she talked about how she did not get up from the front of the bus to go to the back of the bus. And of course, in the book, it's a really small snippet of the story, but having those type of stories in my mind and my life of strong Black women who didn't give up, who went against the grain, is so inspiring to me to continue to just do the things that I do that are for the community, while also holding on to my faith and what's important to me, and knowing that soon things will be better. So that's my shortened take on it.
Okay, and fair enough, fair enough. So I know that you do a lot of different things. You've named off set writing and video series, and I know that you've produced events and planned events in the past and things like that. So can you tell everybody a little bit about how you maintain balance with everything that you have going on?
That question comes up a lot, and I think a couple things for me are what's important, and that's being honest with myself and being in tune with myself. I think those are the two key things. I was talking with a friend the other day. I'm wired maybe a little differently in that I have to be busy. I have to constantly, my mind is constantly creating, it's constantly on. So to say, don't do that is not going to work for me. But what I have learned to do is to pay attention to when I'm getting to that limit where it's too much, whether that's physically how I feel, emotionally how I feel, and then forcing myself to have those reset moments. If it's just taking a day to, even if my mind is still, trying to create, but just saying, you know what, I'm not going to do anything today. I'm not going to actually physically do anything. I'm just going to have that reset. That's been key for me. Paying attention to those cues, and then surrounding yourself with people who also can kind of help check you, can kind of say, you're doing a little much, you only had 3 hours of sleep last night. My husband was like, okay, I'm going to put my foot down because you cannot do another 3-hour nights of sleep. So, having those people who they know that you do a lot, but they're willing to jump in and say, hey, you might want to take a little break. That's been key for me.
And that is so important because many times we as women tend to pour out and pour out and pour out until we're empty. I talked about this just yesterday with one of our teachers for the Restore Her Summit. And, when you think about that, think about a vessel that you're pouring out of, and it's empty, and you're still trying to pour out, and nothing but sediment is left at the bottom. Yeah. So are you're thinking, oh, I'm still pouring out my best. I'm still giving my best, but really you're not. That's sediment. That's the leftovers. And that can't be good for anybody. So it's awesome to hear. Yeah. It's awesome to hear other women that are doing the thing and recognize, you know what, y'all, there's sometimes when we need to step back, reset, renew, get some things poured into us as well, so that we really can be given the best of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that. I'll remember that.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, particularly with writing your first book. I know a lot of the people that tune into Conversations with Cheryl are thinking about writing a book, becoming authors and things like that. So what did that journey look like for you?
So it's so interesting because I never really anticipated writing a book. But I would say within the last couple of years, I've tried to be really, really intentional and in tune to when something is motivating me to just go on. And that's kind of my personality anyway. I pretty much go with things when they come. So the journey, kind of backtracking a little bit. So about 3.5 years ago, my husband and I had moved in with my grandmother. She was doing fine, but it was to the point where she really shouldn't be by herself anymore. She had fallen a couple times. And so we moved in and, she's very independent, but the last year she had fallen and she had actually broken her pelvic bone. And it really knocked her down. They told her she may not be able to walk again. But what was so fantastic about the experience is being there with her and seeing her go so far down as far as in what she was able to do. But she was so motivated and so strong and powerful. And if I were to show you right now a video of my grandmother was literally twerking the other day. Oh, wow. Yes. And that's what really inspired me, because I watched her and I was so impressed and amazed by her strength. And I started just thinking about her and my aunt and my mother, and they're such strong women and so powerful. And I felt like I needed to do something to honor that. I needed to really for them to show them that, hey, I receive it. I receive this strength and this power and this grit that you all have. And I want to honor that. And if nothing else, you will know that you've left that legacy. And so that was really how it started. And I said, I'm going to write a book about it. Had never really thought about writing a book. Enjoy writing, poems and things like that, blogs. But I said, I'm going to write a book about it. And I talked to a couple people who were like, go with it. Yes, you can do it. And there we are.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I find that a lot of people that jump into writing, even if it's fiction writing, they generally base it on what they know, and people that have come into their sphere of influence and utilize that to create the stories that they want to tell. So you've been in business for a while. You've been doing different kinds of things for I know at least 20 years at least. So what has been your biggest challenge when you look back and think about the different things that you put together? I remember one of the times that we got together, I met the wife to the Washington, D.C. sniper as a result of one of the events that you did. What has been probably your biggest challenge trying to work through business ventures and things like that?
It's interesting. For me, one of the biggest challenges is really kind of part of just my journey in life. And I'm so passionate about what I do, and everything I do, really, I've narrowed it down to three kind of what I call pillars. And that's honoring family. Obviously, faith is at the top, but then under that is honoring family, empowering women, and then helping people to feel good. So those are like my three pillars, and everything I do always falls into those categories. The challenge is that because I'm so passionate about it, it can be emotionally draining. And as a person who suffers with depression, that's been the biggest hurdle of all. Because again, like we talked about, when you're pouring out and when you're emotional, when, especially back in the day when I had my domestic violence nonprofit, you're constantly, feeling the pain of so many people over and over and over. And that's been the biggest challenge for me is, not so much the balance with time, but the balance of my emotions. And again, it goes back to listening, and I took a break from my ventures for probably about 7 or 8 years. I stopped my TV show. I stopped the nonprofit because I was at that point where I was like, it's just too much. I have to reset myself, make sure that I'm spiritually grounded first and foremost, but also make sure that I emotionally can handle really empowering people in the community.
So I am one that believes that what we're dealing with right now with this whole pandemic and the COVID and what have you, that it is an opportunity to do exactly what you said, to reset and to take some time. People that have said, I didn't have time. I want to do this venture. I want to write this book. I want to start this business. I want to start this ministry, but I don't have time. Well, guess what? You've had plenty of time now. So if you haven't done it during this, then you weren't planning on doing it anyway. And my question to you right now is, how have you had to pivot? Because many of us are used to having in-person events and, want to be, up close and personal with the people that we deal with and work with. But how have you personally had to pivot during this time?
Yeah, I love it because it's so true. It's so true. And I am definitely a person that's a people person. I need to feel and touch and all of that. But, we do. We're able to make the adjustments, right? We adapt, and the creativity that has come out of this time. One, I finished the first book, so that was one thing. I'm actually currently working on the second book. And then I have a video series that actually is talking about that pivoting, because that's the new word of 2020, pivot. So that's going to be starting soon. So for me, it has been that reset, but it's allowed my creativity to kind of be confined enough because I couldn't get out to where I could really now say, okay, what can I do with all these ideas? And it's been great. It's really been great. And it's funny because I really don't like technology. I really
Yeah.
don't. I'm so intimidated by, I'm so old school, but this has really, we have to use technology, Zoom
Mhm.
and different other platforms. So it's also helped me to get a little more comfortable with that and not be so intimidated with just advancing and being willing to be innovative. So I agree with you. I think it's really turned out well.
I think a lot of people that were not normally anticipating getting into the technology era have had to do so as a result of
Yes.
this. I work a lot with medical offices, with doctors' offices, and things like that. And many of them, some of them still had paper medical records. They hadn't even started doing electronic health records. And
Yeah.
now I'm finding that they didn't have a choice to start doing some telemedicine, and they actually found out that they like it. And it's just so,
It's so amazing.
sometimes you need a little nudge. I think about the scripture that talks about Peter being in the boat, and God said, "Come," Jesus said, "Come to me, step out." Some of us need to be pushed out the boat, in order to get to where it is that we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because if we were left on our own volition, we would never step out ever,
It's so
because
true.
of fear and things like that. Have you ever had a point in your life where fear sort of had you bound? You weren't able to really do what you knew you were supposed to do because you were afraid maybe of what people would say or what they would think about you, or
Absolutely, and coming from the background of being in a domestic violence relationship, I would say that's huge. Coming out of that type of relationship,
Mhm.
you do have fear, and I remember points in my life where, I think about who I was then and who I am now, and I think about the difference. At that time, being afraid to have a voice, being afraid to speak up, and being afraid of even who I really was. So yeah, fear can be so paralyzing. And when you get through and you kind of get through the other side, you realize, wow, I didn't have as much to be afraid of as I thought I did. I remember when I was considering leaving the abusive relationship, I had asked a friend, how will I know how, should I go? I don't know what to do. And I remember him saying, you will know when the desire to leave is greater than the fear to leave. And it was just that simple. After 8 years of being in that relationship, when that desire to leave, when I had finally had it, was greater than the fear, that's when I could go. So, fear is powerful, but the desire to go past the fear can be even more powerful. And when you do that, it's so much freedom that comes with that.
that's good. That's good. That's very true, because I have been in that situation as well, and I understand exactly what you're saying. At some point, it's like, you know what? Okay, it's time to go. There's
Yeah.
nothing left. So,
Yep.
but since we're talking about that and going down that particular avenue, I want to ask you this: have you gotten to a point where you have been able to forgive? I know that at some point I did. It was a process. It was not something that happened overnight. So I
Yeah.
tell people, when you're talking to people about forgiveness and how important that is, you're right, but it's not necessarily something that you can do overnight. I wish it was. I wish it
Yeah.
was, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's not. So, did you ever get to that place, and how did you get there?
And I love that you're bringing that up. I was just having a conversation with someone actually in preparation for the second book, because I think what's important to understand is that forgiveness looks different for each
Mhm,
person. And I
mhm,
think that's what's really key. So at the core, forgiveness is basically you're not holding on to that pain anymore. You're
mhm,
releasing that pain. You're releasing the power that person has over you. However, that looks different. Some people, that means we can be best friends. Other people, it's, I know I do not, you are toxic for me. I cannot associate with you. I'm no longer holding you, you don't have that power over me anymore, but I won't associate with you because that's a toxic relationship. So for me, with that particular abuser, it was along those lines where I've released the hold that his behavior had over me and the consequences of that behavior. However, for my own, mental health, it would never be a situation where we would be best friends.
Right.
But you do. For me, for me to continue to actually move forward in a healthy way, I had to have a measure of closure and let go of certain things. And that's also, I think it's worth making sure to mention. That doesn't mean that you don't still suffer. Even when you forgive, I still have post-traumatic stress from some of the things I went through. And even when I got remarried a few years ago, our first year was very challenging because I was like back in an intimate partner relationship. And I was having a very rough time not thinking that I was back in that first marriage. So, even with forgiveness, people need to understand it doesn't mean that you just never think of it. You never have trauma from it. You may suffer with that for a long time, but you can still forgive and release the power that the situation has over you.
And I think some of the way that you handle it deals with also the level of the offense. I think there may be different levels of offense that we deal with, so that the way that we respond, like you said, may be that, okay, yeah, we can still be friends now after this. We've hugged it out and we're good, or because it was so toxic that we're not going to get back together again. But I am releasing you from what has happened, because ultimately it's not about the other individual, it's about you. And I totally understand what you're saying, because I remember my husband and I wrote a book together, Do You Still Do What Happens Happily Ever After? And I talked about that, the previous relationship that I was in, because I felt like for a while, I called him in the book my bellhop, because he had to help me carry my baggage, because I wasn't ready to release some of that baggage. So I understand what you're saying about still having those emotions and those thoughts and ideas and things that come back to you as a result of what you dealt with. And I want to post this too. One of the people in the comments box said, "Understanding your pain and facing your fears. I had to experience that in my past relationship. I went through divorce, through domestic violence in my marriage. I was hurt, but it was a process of figuring out what I was hurt about and what I was willing to let go of and move forth in victory." And that is so true.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Yeah, I love it.
So true. So listen, before we let you go today, I want you to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about what's next for you, what you have that's going on, and how we can connect with you for future.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So the book, definitely, if you haven't, I'll do a little shameless plug.
Hey, absolutely.
So definitely it's available on Amazon. So you can go there, Celebrating a Legacy of Courage and Resolve. And so you can go to Amazon, get that. But as I mentioned, I am working on my second book, which is really going to take people deeper into my journey of healing and therapy, and provide tips and suggestions, and even like a workbook format for people. I have a video series coming, which I mentioned, which is Pivotal Moments with Lileeta. So be on the lookout for that. That should be within the next month or two. I think I've covered it. Those are the next upcoming things to be on the lookout.
Okay, I'm trying to put this in the box here. Pivotal Moments with Lileeta.
Yes.
Hope I spelled all of that right. There we go. Pivotal Moments with Lileeta. There you go. Yeah, y'all want to be a part of that and find out what she's doing in the future. Lileeta, it is awesome to be able to speak with you again. It's been a minute, but I am so excited to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the same way.
You are so welcome. So listen, everybody, we're talking with Lileeta Thompson Harlem. She's my sister from another mister. Listen, she's my sister in the spirit. We have been keeping in contact with each other and connecting with each other and following each other. So please make sure you go out there and find out more about what she's doing with her books, her new video series. You do not want to miss it. She's been in the game for a minute and she has a lot of wisdom to share. We want to remind you also that you can go out and find out more about what the Restore Her movement is doing. You can visit us at Restore. Listen, I'm trying to do this at the same time. Restore Her movement. I hope I spelled that right, .org. If not, y'all know how to spell Restore Her Movement, restorehermovement.org. We want you guys to visit us there. I think I may have misspelled a little bit, but restorehermovement.org. That's what it is. Visit us there. You can also go to my website, CherylSpeaks.org. You don't want to miss our summit, our Summer Empowerment Summit that's coming up next week, the 7th through the 13th. And Lileeta, when we do the one in fall, I want you to be a part, please. Please
Yes,
be a part.
Yes,
Yeah, we're doing that. And like I said, we're just trying to empower women to do what they've been called to do. And we want to remind you guys, as always, that God can do exceedingly and abundantly more than you could ever ask or think, according to the power that works in you. Bye, Lileeta.
Bye. Thank you.
You guys be blessed. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.